Peace, this is Brother High John. I'm going to be dealing with this topic that basically lust is the gate to hell. Now, this is going to be profound. I'm going to the Bhagavad Gita. I'm going to read a little bit out of there and I'm going to break it down as I read. It says, some people have divine tendencies, others demonic. The demonic do things they should avoid and avoid the things that they should do. They have no sense of uprightness, purity, or truth. They say there is no God, they say. No truth, no spiritual law, no moral order. They say that the basis of life is sex. What else can it be? So, very key, very plain is that what we have to understand is that the main psychological attachment, the main psychological idea that the ordinary human that we may meet in life, especially in the Western world, the modern world, in America, is that their idea is that the basis of life is sex, period. So it may not be something they confess, it may not be something they admit, maybe not something they promote, but it's something that's deep in the subconscious that drives them, you know what I'm saying, innately. That's their end goal at the end of the day. Everything else is just a mechanism or a method to get to that end. But basically what we're reading here is it's breaking down the divine and the demonic people. Now it says the demonic people, the demonic souls, those who are possessed by these demons, they have that as the basis of their mind or their psychology. It says the basis of life is sex. And they say the basis of life is sex. What else can it be? Holding such distorted views, possessing scant discrimination. Scant means little discrimination, meaning they don't have discrimination, meaning being able to distinguish between real and unreal, true and false. The highest principle versus lowest principle. So they have scant discrimination, meaning basically no discrimination. They just go with whatever is shown them verbatim, and they're deceived and they're deluded, and they just follow whatever is presented to them. They have no discrimination between a lie and a deception, or something evil versus something divine and something that's true, or something that's the reality. But it says, they say that the basis of life is sex. What else can it be? Holding such distorted views, possessing scant discrimination, they become enemies of the world, causing suffering and destruction. Now, very key, it says that those people that they call it, that this text is saying is demonic people, possessed by these demonic type of thoughts and spirits, it says that they become enemies of the world. Now, you have to understand that you have a hedonistic population of people that's in the Western world. Hedonistic means basically obsessed with the sexual pleasure, obsessed with sensual pleasures in the Western world. And basically they have an idea that they're peaceful, they're loving, that basically love and sex is synonymous to them. So relationships, their whole life is based on relationships. Even when you deal with spirituality, even when you deal with religion, they based everything based on this sexual impulse that they are perceiving as true love, or as the only genuine reason why we're alive, or that is love. And so that distorted view, like it says earlier, that distorted view is also scant discrimination, meaning very little discrimination of knowledge between true and false. But basically it says they become enemies of the world. So how do those people become enemies of the world? Now, I'm going to put a chart on this video, and hopefully you can see it clearly, but there's a triangle of energy that we're dealing with in life in general, in the animal world and in the human world, basically in wildlife and in human life. And in that chart, you'll see that it's sexuality, brutality, and deception. Now, the sexuality, brutality, and deception are three different methods, three different tools that are used in nature to gain and get the goal of sex, money, which is resources, meaning food, clothing, shelter, but sex, money, and status or power. So those three goals are utilized through the three methods of sexuality, brutality, and deception. Through that, the whole summary of this whole physical and material world is concluded and is done. There's nothing more to learn about the physical world. That is the whole summary. That is the whole conclusion of what this material world is. In nature, we have camouflage. We have different tactics and different methods that different animals have to survive and compete. Well, humans have our different deceptive tactics, and that becomes economics, that becomes religion, that becomes politics, bureaucracy. All different types of methods, different social dynamics people abuse and people manipulate. So in nature, we have sexuality, brutality, and deception to gain power, to gain that desire of that sex attainment. So Remember, the most critical and crucial point that I'm highlighting with this is that basically humans use brutality. That has always been the most dominant force in nature, even amongst humans, to decide who's going to attain that sexual mate. So if you look at goats, if you look at rams, if you look at deer or male bucks, if you look at bulls, you can look at buffalo. All of these different species of animals, mainly in the mammal world, and even in the reptilian and other species, they compete through brutality. So it says those who have this thought, the basis of life is sex. They have the thought that the basis of life is sex, and they say, what else can life be? What else can it be? Holding such distorted views, they have what distorted views, possessing scant discrimination. They become enemies of the world. So just like an animal, they become an enemy to everybody they meet because they're just trying to attain that sexual satisfaction, and they believe that is the only genuine or real goal or meaning of life. So they're going to use the brutality and the deception, and a lot of males and females use sexuality as a deceptive tool as well to gain what more sex or gain other sex. So to gain extra sex, basically. That's why you have people who are cheaters and people who cheat. But women, they may use the sexuality, brutality, and deception. They may use sexuality itself as a seductive tool to get what money and resources. So it goes. It's a dynamic of activity that humans participate in that whole triangle, that chart or that graph I just showed. So basically, those who believe that the basis of life is sex, it says they become enemies of the world, causing suffering and destruction. So they basically innately are the cause of all suffering and destruction. That thought is the very thought, that sex is the basis of life. That thought is the very thought that created slavery, that creates racism, that creates nepotism, that creates classism, that creates sexism. I mean, you go on and on and on. Any dilemma, pretty much all can be found in the root thought and idea from these demonic spirits that the text is trying to elaborate to us. It's basically just thought forms, thought patterns, negative concepts and thought patterns that are basically delusions that humans have in their subconscious that cause all of the horror and brutality we have in this material world. All of your complaints and all of your gripes and all of the problems and issues and dilemmas of this material world can all be traced back to that hunger or sexual impulse, period. But especially when it's the idea in the mind that this is the meaning and absolute only meaning of life. It says they are hypocritical, proud, arrogant, living in delusion, clinging to deluded ideas, insatiable in their desires. They pursue their unclean ends. Although burdened with fears that end only with death, they still maintain complete assurance. So it says even though they're burdened with fears and anxiety in their heart. Remember, the heart is dealing with the heart chakra. Now remember, this whole chapter in the Bhagavad Gita is going to be laying out different energies that's inside of our body. Remember, the kingdom of heaven is within, but so is the kingdom of hell. Remember, if the demons dominate your body, that is the kingdom of hell, conquering the whole spiritual world. If the divine spiritual thoughts, or what we call angels in the Western world, dominates your body is now possessed by the kingdom of heaven. It's that simple. So the heart is the realm of fears, the realm of anxiety, right? So it says they still maintain with complete assurance. So if you want to know why all of this evil is going on in the world, there's so much evil people, and they perpetuate their evil every day, nonstop. They drive, they go to work, they go to war. Their activities never end. They invincible. They unstoppable. It's because, like this text it just showed us, they still maintain complete assurance. They completely assured of themselves. They're completely confident. Whereas the spiritual people, the divine people, are the ones that are in doubt. So they're the ones who are reluctant. They're the ones who have these inhibitions from practicing and trying to be active in the world. But whereas those who are evil, it says even though they burden with fears in their heart, they still maintain complete assurance. Their heart is strong. They say that gratification of lust is the highest that life can offer. So remember that they repeated it again. So they have this thought that the gratification of lust is the highest that life can offer. Bound on all sides by scheming and anxiety, driven by anger and greed, they amass by any means they can a hoard of money for the satisfaction of their cravings. It says This is how they go on, deluded by ignorance, bound by their greed and entangled in a web of delusion, whirled about by a fragmented mind, they fall into a dark hell. Okay, so deluded by ignorance, remember in that brow chakra, they're blocked off from those worlds. Remember, because of the fear, they're blocked off from the heart chakra. They fall into the realms of hell. Hell will be the patala realms, which are under the root chakra, right? Under the root chakra, down into the legs and the feet, right? Because remember, the sexual organ is the sacral plexus, and they're trapped below that. So they fall into what? A dark hell. And that's what this whole video is talking about from the get-go, is that I try to make it plain that lust is the gate to hell, and this is breaking it down for us. But they get caught up in a web of delusion. Remember, brow chakra gets blocked off. They get caught in the illusion of Maya, of this world. And it says they fall into a dark hell. It says self-importance. Self-importance will be the solar plexus. Solar plexus is all about social positioning and social status. Remember, we said brutality, sexuality, and deception, right? For money, sex, and status. Money will be what? Root chakra. Sex will be sacral plexus, and status will be what? Solar plexus. So self-importance will be what? Status or power. Self-importance. It says swept away by the pride of wealth. Pride is the ego, meaning that's the crown chakra. Meaning the crown chakra is what? Completely shut down, completely envious of everyone. They abuse my presence within their own bodies and in the bodies of others. So they abuse God, which is the Christ or Krishna, inside of their own bodies by their activities, by their mentality, and they abuse others, through manipulating and harming them, whether it's through sex, whether it's through business, whether it's through friendship, through family, through socializing. They abuse the God within inside of themselves and the God that's inside of other people. And for that's the root of where karma comes from. Good or bad acts, you abuse the soul or the higher self or the higher being, which we might call God or Christ or the Krishna, inside of yourself and others. So let's keep moving. It says they abuse my presence within their own bodies and in the bodies of others. It says life after life, I cast those who are malicious, hateful, cruel, and degraded into the wombs of those with similar demonic natures. So very key. Let's make this plain. It says life after life. So that should give you insight on how hell is actually this material and physical world. It says life after life. It didn't say life after death. It said life after life. It's very key, because you can be trapped in a wheel of samsara, or wheel of reincarnation, for millenniums, for eons, or for many generations of your ancestors, based on your activities. Now, if you ascend to a higher state of consciousness, you may be able to get liberated from this physical world. But if you remain in these lower chakras, these lower forces and lower spirits or states of consciousness inside of your body, which is these lower chakras, you would have to reincarnate back into this physical world to pay what we know is which is obvious, which the world knows is what your karma. So it says life after life. It doesn't say life after death. Life after life, I cast those who are malicious, hateful, cruel, and degraded into the wombs of those with similar demonic natures. So if you want to know why certain people are born in a scenario, even yourself, you may apply to yourself, where their parents are in a low state, a negative demonic-like state, and they abuse their children, they harm their children, they neglect their children, it's because of previous lives and the previous ancestors that you once were, or ancestors that you once were, gave birth through lineage that direct parent that you were born under. So you caused the karma, you caused the effect that you are now born in. Okay, said birth after birth, they find themselves with demonic tendencies. They degraded in this way, they fail to reach me and fall lower still. So when it says to reach me, that me is talking about Krishna or your own higher self, your soul, right? Before this physical world, the essence of who you are is consciousness in the primordial world. So what we call heaven or spiritual world. So basically not this physical world, because remember, like we said earlier, this material world or physical world in these low states of consciousness is synonymous or the same as hell, one and the same. And I'll break that down in the future. I'll go into the etymology of hell. Remember, hell comes from the word kel or kal, and that word kal is where you get the word skull or skeleton from. Skeleton, even your cells. Remember, cells come from the same word as hell. Cells, skulls, skeleton, that's basically your physical body, meaning being trapped in a physical body. That is hell. It's that simple. There's no need to be deluded by the concept, or no need to be lost about the concept. We can break that down in the future. I'll do a whole video on that. But the point is, like I said, this material world, this physical world is hell. So, and if you're born here because of some ancestral or karmatic sins or some karmatic debt that you're here to pay for. Once you have exhausted all of your karma, meaning you burned it all up, that's when you are able to attain that true or original consciousness that you once had, and you're able to ascend back to the spiritual world eternally. So that is the mystery, that's the secret. But we're dealing with lust today, and how that is the gate or the entryway into hell, as opposed to what is the entryway into the spiritual world of heaven. We'll deal with that in the future. There are 3 gates to this self-destructive hell. It says there are 3 gates to this self-destructive hell. 3 gates to hell, right? It says lust, anger, and greed. Now remember, I said brutality, sexuality, and deception. It says lust, anger, and greed. Remember, that's brutality, sexuality, deception. The deception is to what? Gain wealth, to gain money. That's the gateway to money. Anger is what? The brutality. Lust is the sexuality or the seduction. The seduction. Those are the 3 gates to hell, right? If you look at chakras once again, you'll see that the Patala worlds are under the root chakra or the Muladhara chakra, and in those worlds, it's 3 gates to enter into those lower worlds, right? It says renounce these 3, and that's basically what we're dealing with this video, dealing with renunciation, which the Western world has kept or neglected to expose the world to, or which the West has lacked to investigate or learn the knowledge about. But renunciation or asceticism is basically the highest advanced spiritual practice and the highest advanced mystery that was brought from Asia and from Africa and from many different Southern European masters, spiritual masters. And we're talking in the ancient world from 6000 BCE to 2500 BCE, all the way to the time of what we call the Jesus, the Christ, and his disciples, the Essenes, the Nazarenes. All of them are under the same order, the same spiritual practice. The Buddhists, the Taoists, the Jains, on and on and on. So we'll unpack all of that in the future, and we'll show the origins of it and what it's about. But the point is, it says renounce these 3. So you have to renounce those 3. It's at the bottom by the root chakra. Remember, lust, anger, and greed. Lust being this sacral plexus, is called the Swadhisthana chakra. And the greed being the root chakra, the Muladhara chakra. We have to renounce them and ascend above them. It's that simple. It says those who escape from these 3 gates of darkness seek what is best and attains life's supreme goal. So let me show you those 3: the root chakra, the sacral plexus, and the solar plexus. Those who are able to escape those 3, they attain the highest supreme goal. The highest supreme goal is called nirvana or samadhi, but basically liberation or moksha, right? Liberation of your soul, which is what at the crown chakra. That's where God is, right? Those who escape from these 3 gates of darkness seek what is best and attains life's supreme goals. The final goal for all human souls, our only goal should be the ultimate goal that we should all have. That is the innate completion of our cycle down here in this wheel of samsara, or this physical world that basically this text is calling hell. That would be the supreme goal called moksha. That's the 4th and final and supreme goal. But it says others disregard the teachings of the scriptures, right? Driven by selfish desire. So that's why they deny the teachings of the scriptures. Like they'll deny this in the Bhagavad Gita, because they were driven by selfish desires. They miss the goal of life. So they'll miss attaining and ascending to the crown chakra and getting liberated. They'll miss that goal, which is the ultimate goal of life for all conscious beings. It says earlier, it says they'll fall into a dark hell. That hell will be a physical experience of misfortune and horror. They'll be born in it. Remember, it says born in the wombs. What does it say? It says born in the wombs of similar demonic natures, right? They're born even in the womb. So you're born in the family of a demonic household, a demonic family, right? Demonic mother and father. Is that what we just dealt with this holy teaching basically showed that 2 things I want to make very plain, very simple. That the material world itself, this physical world, it says life after life. This material world itself, this life itself that we were born in, is hell. Now remember, hell is not literal. Hell is a metaphor or a metaphysical concept, a symbol, a motif that's symbolic, that represents a state. I'll go thoroughly into what hell is and how this premise came about, this theology, this concept came about. But nevertheless, that's the first point. This material world is hell. Now, what is the gate into this hell? Well, the gate is in your previous lives, in your ancestors' body. When you were in your ancestors' body, you entered into this hell through three gates. And the major one was what? Lust. Because remember, I said lust is the gate to hell. So this video is basically dealing with what? Semen retention. Basically, what you might call NoFap, right? NoFap, no masturbation, no porno, none of these type of things that basically can rob you of your prana or your energy. And we're dealing with basically celibacy, we basically call brahmacharya, meaning the path to God, path to your own self of consciousness, the true and original, genuine path. So, in that sense, remember those 2 points. One, this material world, or physical world, is actually is actually hell. That hell is nothing but a metaphor for here, symbolically. And two, the gate to that hell is what? Lust. And with that, peace. Is Brother High John.